got Bob Costello with us today. He's going to give us a few minutes and talk to us. He's from the American Trucking Association.
Right. No doubt that freight has been in a recession, right?
For
And
months.
for month, yeah, it's been a while. I think we're close to bottom. Independent contractors that are in the spot market, and this is important, and went out and bought that really expensive used trucks during 2021 and early 2022.
Yep. But I don't think interest rates are going to come down anytime soon, and we still have a few more quarters where rate hikes really haven't fully taken their effect. Inflation's down, but it's not where they want it to be, right? Where the Fed wants it to be. But I think we're going to get there. Do you agree or don't?
For the fleets that are left, and what you described that happened just before the 4th of July, things could start to feel better
Right.
because enough capacity, cumulative, really starting late last year, as you said, and you're right, it happened, but it didn't happen quite as much, or maybe it just wasn't visible. I do think talking to some folks, it's more of it is going on right now. They will start to feel better. Even if demand, all we really need is demand to level off and maybe even come up just a hair, and and fleets are going to feel it's going to feel different out there because again, it's not like there's any data we can go to and go, a lot of these fleets aren't calling up FMCSA and go, hey, I'm going out of business. Go ahead and take me out of your database, right? I mean, they wait for them to figure that out, and so yeah, it's a supply side story that eventually, right, the industry will start to feel it, and I do think it's sort of a second wave that is transpiring right now.
So if what you're sharing with us is a bellwether, I believe, the information, if you want real time factual information on who's staying in business and who's not, it's not coming out of FMCSA. It's coming from the insurance providers that are getting their policies canceled.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. That's what I said. I talked to them, the anecdotal evidence from them
Right.
is just because you're small doesn't mean you fail in this environment, right?
Correct.
It's it's you're primarily in the spot market and you went out and bought a bunch of really expensive used equipment. That was the killer, right? You didn't know it at the time, but that's what. But those are the folks. Yes, they're not renewing, and the insurance providers are like, why are you not renewing? Well, I went under. I'm no longer in business.
Now, fast forward through that, and there'll be more, I would say, that are going to go under by the end of the year that we're going to hear about in December or late November that they'll be closing their doors. But we've seen big companies that have been in business a long period of time close their doors. But I don't know that that's a lot different than any other year. At some point in time, they decide it's not worthwhile, and that's due to volatility, right?
I think it's due to a lot of things, but I think we all know maybe a large provider that recently went out of business, right? I mean,
Maybe.
but there's also been acquisitions of big truckload carriers, and I can tell you some of those fleets are not only are they not growing, now they're shrinking. Okay.
Right.
There's not capacity going up in this industry. I can point to other data. I'm looking at some data right now. I like to look at, it comes from the Department of Labor every month. It's called it's employment levels of production and non-supervisory employees. I know that sounds crazy, but what it in the general and specialized long distance truckload and LTL industry, that's drivers for the most part, right? It's not a
Mm-hmm.
pure driver number, but it's drivers. Well, it did rise for a while, but since late last year, we've seen this metric fall almost 11 by 11,000 employees, right? And that doesn't include what's happened transpired recently. You are starting to see other measures. We look at some data on, our fleets adding employees. Are they adding drivers? In the second quarter, they're not reducing their driver counts. These are contract carriers, right, on the truckload side. They're not reducing their trucks and tractor counts much, but they're not growing it really any either. right? And in fact, that group is still off about 5.5% from the pre-pandemic levels in terms of tractor counts.
I would
So
agree with that.
so it is, and of course, I keep saying during the pandemic, the OEMs, because of all this supply chain issues, couldn't build trucks or enough trucks, and people are getting fraction of what they're ordering and stuff. And I keep saying, what does this industry always do during the really good times? They buy a bunch of trucks. What could they not do this past time? They couldn't buy a bunch of trucks. So you add it all up, all that's got to happen is if we can get demand, if demand starts to level off here and stop falling and levels off, maybe ticks up a hair. I'm telling you, it's going to start to feel different for those that are in the industry.
Yeah, that made it to the other side.
Correct.
I would agree. I think that you're dead on. I have a lot of the 20-ish truck private fleets that are at 17, 18 trucks right now.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think the picture would have looked much different had they been able to buy a lot of equipment during the pandemic.
Right.
Then we would have a plethora, like in '07 to 10, of excess equipment all over the country sitting that the banks owned, which we're not absorbing now. So that may allow things to recover somewhat, I would say, more timely than it would have otherwise. So navigating this and trying to forecast, I think that there's going to be positives in the next 2 quarters that we're going to see through the holidays. I don't know that it's sustainable long term, but it's some positives for a foundation. And then next year, maybe status quo for the election year is, with a little bumps and digging
Right.
out. I don't see it flying up.
No, I don't either. But if we even got back to, let's say normally number of loads goes up about 2% a year on average. If we got to 1% growth, I think fleets that are still around would notice it and start to feel better. Again, because it is a supply side story. Supply is left. You don't necessarily need the average growth. If you just get a little bit of growth, it's going to feel different. It's going to feel better.
Wonderful. Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. I knew you'd have a great delivery for us, so thank you. You always paint the picture. I appreciate you. How are things going with the ATA?
Things are busy. We got a lot of moving parts here, and on the environmental side, right? I
Yep.
mean, lots with California. We're doing that. We've got things on the safety side, and of course we got, there's more and more infrastructure spending going on. That's great. We love that. By the way, we didn't mention, one of the things I do, you were, rightfully so, poking a little fun at me on my titles. It is ridiculously long, but
No, it's impressive.
I don't know about that, but I'm telling you, man, freight from Mexico continues to be strong. Wow. And that gets back to this idea of nearshoring, reshoring, friendshoring, whatever you want to call it. We've had two administrations, one Republican, one Democrat, that have pushed these policies. And while we went to China for 30 years, you don't come back overnight. The reality is there are dribs and drabs of it that are happening, and we are seeing it in the data. So there's a lot of things that we try to do, my team tries to do at the border to make both the northern and southern borders as efficient as possible. And workforce development stuff continues to go on, even though the driver market has gotten easier. It is still, things in that area. So bottom line is it's been a busy summer.
Yeah, I can imagine. Now, do you see a lot coming back into the U.S., or you think a lot of it's stopping in Mexico?
I think the higher end production, in other words, production that is a lot of automated production. I mean, I love going to factories, by the way. It's one of my favorite things to do. And it is, I am always amazed at those when you see all the humans are doing is making sure the robots and the computers are working correctly. That kind of production can absolutely come back to the US, right? But anything that's more,
Labor
human
intensive?
intensive, labor intensive, thank you. I think that kind of stuff is more likely Mexico.
Okay.
I mean, they're definitely, listen, compared to even I've been to some factories in China, right? I mean, some are very high tech, others are not. Some are more labor intensive. Same in Mexico, but I think the it's even though labor rates, I mean, people got to realize labor rates in Mexico are higher than that in China, right? So it's not, you don't save money on labor, but you're closer to the market, and so I think North America in general is gonna. I'm bullish on North American production, Canada, US, and Mexico, understanding that a bulk of it will be Mexico in the years ahead.
I think we're seeing that, to your point. I think the ATA has been working hard from what we see and what I've seen. Mr. Boyle, Mr. Spear, everybody talking on Capitol Hill. I appreciate a lot of things that a lot of people do, but we appreciate the candid, the honest, genuine, fact-based discussions that we've seen a lot of. So please let them know we appreciate them and thank them.
Appreciate it.
And thank you so much for being on Stay in Your Lane. Uh, from a timeline perspective, we want to probably try and get you on before Thanksgiving, see where we're at, if that's okay with
Send me
you.
an email. Yep.
All right. Hey, thank you so much.
Hey, no problem.
Appreciate you.
Have a good one.
You too.